Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Conversations with Adrian. This topic, we're looking forward to talking to the folks over at IEMA, the Illinois Emergency Management Agency, and we're going to discuss with them what our partnership looks like now and some of the things that we've been working on at the state level, and then some of how the VOADs and COADS and during the time of the disaster crisis, we can all work together to make sure that those citizens affected by the disasters across Illinois can get the best services that we can possibly provide. So I'm going to start by introducing Gabby. If you could introduce yourself and who you are and what you do at IEMA and a little bit like that would be great.
Sure, Adrian. I'm really excited to be here talking with you. I'm Gabby Hayne, and I am the mass care planner at the Illinois Emergency Management Agency, and I work in the interagency strategic planning cell there. So I work in mass care. Mass care is anything related to short-term direct effects of a disaster on a person. And so our main goal is to alleviate suffering and to meet basic human needs right after disaster. So sheltering, feeding, emotional and spiritual care, reunification of individuals and their families, anything we can do to help people.
So, and then we've also got Michelle Henkin with us, also from IEMA. Michelle, could you introduce yourself and a little bit what you do?
Sure. My name is Michelle Hannick, and I'm the Volunteer Programs Manager at the Serve Illinois Commission. The Serve Illinois Commission is the Governor's Commission on Volunteerism and Community Service. So you're probably wondering, well, how does that impact disasters? Well, Serve Illinois is actually the lead agency for the Illinois Emergency Operations Plan for volunteers and donations. So anytime there's an issue that is disaster related, that either it's in preparedness or response or recovery, we help lead that. And in that role, I serve as the state's voluntary agency liaison, which means that I get to work with all the non-governmental organizations that are out there helping people. So it's a very rewarding job. I've been doing that part of my job either at IEMA or at the commission for about 18 years. So I'm looking forward to working with more community action agencies, reaching more of you. I got to know some of you, but I think this is a super important subject that we're all involved in, and obviously COVID's brought this to light more and more. So I'm glad Adrian in his disco shirt asked us to participate with you
today. So, and exactly, and I think most everybody has seen the shirt before at some of the live. It's even better whenever you get the full effect of the leather pants that I have on. That's really brings out the whole disco theme for me that I have going on. So Gabby, when we talk, I know I've worked with you on a couple really good projects, a couple really good boards. The first one I'd like to talk about is the one that you referenced early on the managed care board, or I can't think of the actual legitimate name. And I know we've had about a half dozen of our agencies that have participated on that board and came in, to specifically talk about during the peak of COVID, whenever we first went more remote, for us to help get a sense of what was going on the ground. Can you talk about that group of people and what kind of some of the things that we've done and who all is on that group?
Sure. So when COVID-19 was becoming a bigger issue, we at the state, we activated our state emergency operations centers. So we automatically bring in a bunch of different state agency liaisons in order to work through issues as they arise. And this time things were a little bit different because we were operating in a pandemic. We couldn't bring everybody together in person always. And so our group, talking about mass care and how we can really address some of the social service needs and community needs, we started meeting virtually. So at first, I think we were meeting 2 times a week and really looking at what our capabilities were across the state. What could we do in order to help our citizens and making sure that we understood all the resources that were available, what type of services we could still do in a pandemic, could we offer them virtually. So we brought together several different agencies. So we had you and Michelle here. We also had individuals from the Red Cross, Salvation Army, the Illinois Department on Aging, Illinois Department of Agriculture, the Illinois Department of Human Services, the Deaf and Hard of Hearing Commission, and anyone else that I'm giving out?
Well, I think some of the people that you're leaving out that I think I felt brought a lot or bring a lot to the table was like the Baptist organization and some of those
Yes,
other organizations that do some of these things that we don't always think about doing being done in that. So
definitely. We had the chair of the Illinois Voluntary Organizations Active in Disasters, and so he is part of the Illinois Southern Baptist group that works on disasters as well, and then also represents their bigger group. And so that was really great to have his perspective. And I think Michelle will talk a little bit later about the VOADs and some of the different organizations that they represent. Some of the other people that really helped with our perspective is we had some different guest speakers from community action agencies across the state. And that really helped us identify what was going on at the local level and how we can better serve our communities and equip individuals and community organizations throughout the state with the tools, resources, and just support and listening ears as we're working through services in the pandemic.
yeah, and I know the feedback I received from those agencies. I can't think of them all, but I know we had Family Services Agency of DeKalb, and I want to say we had CEFS and we had St. Clair County, I believe that was on there. I never should have started because I'm going to leave somebody out and they're going to get really mad at me. And, but that's, I think from all those agencies, when Tri-County Community Opportunities Council was on there, I think every one of those agencies also, after they sat on it, sent me an email saying how nice it was to actually see a group. And I know I've told you before, but I truly think that this group that you put together is probably one of the better groups that I've sat on in my 20 years of doing the CSBG work and really a lot of good work came out of that. Another one I wanted to talk to you about just a little bit was you also did some stuff with alternative housing type stuff. Can we talk about that just a little bit and what you did and how that looks moving forward?
Sure thing. So typically, following a disaster, we operate congregate shelters in school gymnasiums and in a lot of different settings. So individuals who've been impacted by the disaster have a place where they can go. With COVID, individuals who are COVID positive and aren't able to isolate or quarantine in their home, they also need a place to go, but we can't operate a typical shelter. So the state started looking at ways where we could do what we've called alternate housing, which is a non-congregate approach to being able to house individuals who are COVID positive, presumed positive, or those who are at risk, such as healthcare workers and first responders. So our initial response had to adapt over time. Initially, we were looking at having a lot of people across the state, thousands that were going to need to be housed. So we set up 3 regional facilities so that as counties' capacity was overwhelmed, we would have a place that we would be able to refer to the counties so they could send individuals to these hotels. And over time, we recognized there was a little bit of a difference in the types of individuals we were seeing and the quantity. So we saw fewer than 300 individuals needing to be housed across the state at the state level. So most of the individuals who were needing a place to be housed were able to have that met within their county. So at the state, we started looking at how can we better build up capacity at the county level in order to help mitigate any needs that would arise to the state. How can we as a state better support the counties and build more resiliency and bringing individuals together and their communities together around some of these issues? So we put together a template to help with planning efforts, and we started looking at bringing agencies together at the state level and then helping to facilitate that at the local level as well. So Adrian, you were a guest speaker on one of the workshops we did. We did 5 workshops throughout the month of June, talking about alternate housing, our role, the importance of working together, how we can accomplish that, and really starting the dialogue of practically how we can operate together, what resources each agency brings to the table, both at the state level and at the local level, and then some tools that could be utilized. So we're still working on going, and now we're working directly with counties and supporting them in the development of their plans and helping them make connections between their Department of Human Services, public health, and other agencies, their community action agencies, shelter providers, and others in their communities.
Now, you mentioned the series of webinars that you had, that there was 5 of them, and I was a guest speaker on one of them. Now, you can be honest with me, that was probably the best one of the webinars, and probably the one that probably went most viral, correct? The one that I was on. So
we had a lot of individuals who did come and participate in that workshop for sure. So, and it is posted. If anybody wants to see this, it's posted on the IEMA website. You can go there and see it.
Yeah, and that's exactly where I wanted to kind of lead into is for those people who missed that, where would they go to find that webinar series and be able to watch those after the fact?
Anybody who wants to can look and go to our website. It's althousing.iema.illinois.gov. And so pretty easy to remember, althousing.iema.illinois.gov.
And then before I move on and start grilling Michelle, because she's so patiently waiting, you've developed a really nice resource document that I think I'm going to share a screen here if I can figure out how to share the content. Make sure I've got the right screen popping up. That screen too. I hope I got the right screen. Yeah. So I wanted to share this screen here with everybody real quick. And one thing, Gabby, do you want to talk about what this document is and kind of how agencies could use it or how we would utilize this document?
Sure. So we, as part of our mass care team with all the different agencies, one of the gaps we saw was a complete list of different programs that were available and how they were operating in the current environment with COVID. So we conducted a survey. Thank you for all of you who participated in that survey. And now we've used that and we've compiled that into a greater database where we have all the community action agencies. We have different nonprofits from across the state as well. We also have different tabs. You can look at other federal programs, different state programs, and then grant opportunities as well through charitable giving. So this is still a work in progress. We're getting a little bit closer, and I've added a column here for if it's COVID specific or if it's general. A lot of programs are being modified in some capacity in order to operate under COVID, and some are specific to COVID. So as we continue throughout the pandemic, I'll be updating this, and anyone who has thoughts or comments or anything else they'd like to add or programs that they think would be beneficial to include in here, it would be great to have them. So our purpose for this was to be able to have a base for all of us to be operating from and to just build resiliency across the state.
And so what I'm going to do for the network out there listening, I'm going to along with the packet for all the different presentations and things, your grant application package and everything, I'm going to go ahead and send out this spreadsheet, you know, and if somebody sees that the information on this sheet needs updating or something, how do you want them to handle that? Do you want them to contact me and I go through you, or do you want them to contact you directly, or what would your preference be on that, Gabby?
Whatever your preference would be, I'm happy to handle any of the updates. Okay.
So we'll get that, and I'll share Gabby's email address and all that. And however the agency feels comfortable, I'm fine with whether it goes through me or goes directly to you, and that way agencies will be able to reach out to you and you know, maybe ask any other questions that my thorough and incisive interview didn't cover. So I watched a lot of Dan Rather big interviews as I was leading up into this webinar series, just to make sure that I was spot on and good to go. So, all right, Gabby, I appreciate it very much. And Michelle, you're next up on the hot seat here. So,
all right. I do know who Dan Rather is. I'm not that old, or not that young.
Yeah. You know, half my audience is out there saying, "Who is Dan Rather?"
Right, you know? That's exactly what I thought. If you ask some people, they probably don't know. An old newscaster.
Yes. So again, you do a lot with the VOADs and COADs, and well, I guess one other thing, and this is I can't remember who I get the emails from that I forward out. I think it's from either Gabby or Michelle. So whenever we have a disaster, say a tornado or something in an area, anymore I've been sending out, if it's something to the magnitude that it kind of gets on IEMA's radar, I've been sending out emails to that agency that has like a disaster report, a lot of times pinpoints the exact street addresses that are affected and areas that are affected, and that's coming from IEMA, and which is it you, Gabby, or Michelle that sends that out to me, or is it sometimes either one of you, or is it neither of you?
It depends, honestly, on who's working at IEMA at the time, kind of, you know. Really, I think us having this group of mass care and like agencies working together is going to parlay into a lot of additional benefits for the next event. So working in small group with similar like-minded people on the same subject, I think is really, we're going to be talking more and more. We just talked earlier today about a completely different event. And so really, I think instead of waiting for somebody else to tell us what's going on, we can be proactive among each other and kind of coordinate our plans so we can be responsive for the next thing. So I've sent emails out, Gabby sent emails out. I mean, the good thing is the information is getting in the right place. So, yeah.
I think that's been another great benefit of the relationship that we've developed between your guys' office and our office at the state is being able to get that out to agencies to be able to have a better understanding of the affected area and kind of where to start without having to wait for customers maybe to come into our offices, you know, looking for help. We can be a little bit more proactive, I believe, than we have been in the past. Which that I'm gonna segue into all the way into Michelle now with I think you've got a small presentation. Am I right on that, Michelle?
I do, and I think it will just, the goal is to educate everyone. You know, my hope is that the things I'm going to talk about, you know, community action agencies already know all of these things and you're wasting your time listening to me, but that's probably not the case. And the goal, you know, even for me, I have learned a lot. I've been in this business 20 years. I had never met, or at least knowingly met, a community action agency until I was at the response to the Taylorsville tornado a year and a half ago. There, I was able to meet an organization, CEFS, when we were looking to transition volunteer management locally, and it just never dawned on me. And I was kind of like, well, boo to me. Why didn't I know this existed? Then I was able to make that connection and see the good work they did with a larger state network and become more involved with what Adrian was doing. And really, you never want to be meeting people because there's heartache of others, because there's a tornado. But it even still happens to me being in this business this long. So our goal is to make it to where, you understand that there's other things going on related to disaster, that you can feel involved in disaster preparedness and response and recovery. And, really it's not just government, it's all of us. It's us as individuals that, help make this go well. So that's kind of the point of this presentation, is just an educational process. So I will share my screen. I guess I could have done that while I was sitting here talking, but luckily I am sure all of you are just as awesome as Seth. So with that, I'm just going to talk a little bit about disaster voluntary organizations, how, trying to partner together to support all phases of an emergency. We tend to, in our business, use a lot of acronyms, a lot of things like where we think people fully understand what we're talking about, but in reality, no, we don't necessarily have everyone understanding. So I'm going to use a few slides to just educate on, what our side of the business is. And emergency management has different, what we call functions, and they happen before an incident, during an incident, and after an incident. Prevention, preparedness, mitigation, response, and recovery are kind of our phases. So preventing meaning before something happens physically, preparedness meaning what kind of actions we can take as communities, as members of the community or community organizations. Mitigation is a similar thing. The response is the actual event, and recovery, which can take a very long time. In the example that I gave of Taylor, it's a year and a half later. I'm sure Steph's is still there working on the rebuild process with the long-term recovery group they're called Missions for Taylor, and they probably will be for at least another year. So this is a cyclical process, and it's never as quick as we would hope. So we throw a lot of acronyms around. I want to kind of let you know what those are really quickly. A VOAD and COAD are really the same thing to me. VOAD is Voluntary Organizations Active in Disaster. All that is a group of like-minded people who are primarily non-governmental or volunteer groups that can work within a defined area that they define themselves. It can be local, county, regional, etc. And they work together to help the community respond and recover to a disaster. They're typically listed in the county's emergency operations plan. Typically that group would have a seat at a local emergency operations center. And basically it's so they can all work together to prevent duplication of benefits and get the needs met of the disaster survivors. Some people like being called COAD. It's a little more inclusive. COAD meaning community, but really it's the same thing. It's a coalition of like-minded people together. So LTRC, LTRG, that is a similar set of group to VOAD and COAD. Usually VOADs and COADs look at response and preparedness activities, and long-term recovery is more about after the disaster, what we're going to do in that longer spell. So Missions for Taylorville is a perfect example of a long-term recovery committee. So it's similar people, but it's just a little bit different focused. So having these types of groups in a disaster plan helps us in government, because the non-governmental organizations can do things that we can't. For example, they can go on private property. They can do debris management. They can help people by getting trees off their roofs. They can do things. As government, we can't go on private property. That's just simply not an allowed thing. So direct assistance, meaning they can help individuals and households quickly, much more quickly than we can in government. It's helpful to us because for an emergency manager, they don't have to call around and get help. They know the one organization where they've all aligned with themselves, and they can make one call, get a representative of the VOAD or COAD there, and then they will coordinate with the other voluntary agencies. It also helps disaster survivors because they're not trying to bounce around between different places. Many times you don't necessarily know where to go, or you're overwhelmed with the process. Who do I call? How do I get this, et cetera, et cetera. There's a streamlined process. It helps people get what they need quicker, and it avoids duplication of benefits among groups, so that those organizations know what other organizations are giving individuals, and they can coordinate in a good fashion. I guess the biggest thing is disasters aren't an emergency management problem. It's not up to the government to do everything. It's a community problem. Everyone can help. If we're well organized, it just makes it that much quicker. So in the state, this is the more recent map. I am missing one new long-term recovery committee. As you can tell, we don't have a lot of long-term recovery or COAD or VOADs, and we're looking to change that. And that's one of the reasons that we wanted to better educate you all. This is just nobody has to register with the state. They could just go do what they want and work together. So we're constantly uncovering people that have a COAD, and we're constantly trying to facilitate the development of one before an event. For example, that one in Region 8, they had their first meeting right before COVID happened, and unfortunately we've not been able to have the second, but they know that they want to organize well. So that's really important.
So Michelle, if
Yes,
we
sir.
have a community action agency that's watching this and they saw that map on the last slide that you had,
Yep.
and they want to try and organize a VOAD or COAD, how would they start? Does that start with a call to you, or would it start with the calling at the county levels to talk to the emergency response teams, or how
Yep.
how would they start that process?
All of that, I would redirect them probably most likely to the local emergency manager and help them try to figure out what already exists, if nothing exists. A lot of times what I do, I joke that I know a little about a lot. So I'm constantly just trying to connect people. I know so-and-so works on this there. I'm constantly trying to connect people. And so, yeah, anybody can form this VOAD or COAD. It doesn't have to be, necessarily sanctioned by any governmental entity. It's just basically a bunch of group of people that want to work on one subject together. So it can be started any number of ways, Adrian.
Okay, thanks.
Just to give you an idea, national VOAD, so there is a national VOAD, there's a state VOAD, and there can be local ones. So the concept is fairly old, 50 years old, and this is the list of the first sets of organizations that founded National VOAD, and they're probably familiar to you. Most of them are faith-based organizations. And the interesting thing is on the next slide is they have kind of a tenet, an operating procedure, and that the 4 C's, these are the things that are most important when working together. And that includes communication, collaboration, cooperation, and coordination, meaning we're all working together for the same good. And the best part about that of their other tenet is uniqueness of diversity funneled into a cooperative goal. While you may see different organizations with different colors, different shirts, different vests, they're all working there together for one mission. So they all have different hats, but they're willing to throw their hats on the table and work together. And many of the voluntary organizations that are listed here, they have different things that they like to do that they're really good at. And they're all different, but when you put them all together, they're all serving a bigger purpose. So, for example, Team Rubicon, that's one of our fairly new VOAD partners, and they are primarily derived from veterans who come in the community and do debris removal and other things. UMCOR there, the Methodists, they are really big in the Springfield area. They have a very large warehouse where they give out a lot of disaster relief supplies. Suchi, they are ones that tend to give out debit cards when things happen. So they all have their own little thing, but as a whole, yeah.
Can I mention the Baptists who like to do the muck out? Only
Yes.
because I love to say muck out. That's one of my favorite phrases I've learned in this whole thing is muck out. So
Yep.
which muck out is basically cleaning all the muck out of the basement. So it's a pretty complicated term. So
yep, it's literally getting rid of muddy junk and mold remediation. So again, these are services provided directly to individuals affected by disaster. And the interesting thing about long-term recovery groups, so for me in government, we usually see this org chart, and it's very top down, and they call it incident command structure or national incident management system. Those are 2 terms. But when it comes to VOAD, COAD, long-term recovery, it's very cyclical. And all of these things listed here can be done by a long-term recovery committee or VOAD or COAD, but they don't all have to be too. The good thing is that, usually it's an executive board kind of driving the ship, and then all these different things get taken care of along the way by this group. So it's really interesting to see how that work is very different than how we operate in government. But really, these are the types of services, if I had to pick large buckets that voluntary agencies can bring to the table. And for me, the interesting thing, getting to know the community action agencies better, is that you guys do a lot of these things too, or you can pay for a lot of these things to be done. So it makes perfect sense if every community action agency is at the table with a VOAD or COAD as being a member or interested in starting one. So if I had some words of wisdom after my 20 years of experience, what would I tell you you can do? Well, first of all, take disasters seriously. I know this is not really a very fun one because nobody wants to think about the worst thing that can happen, but we need to. And this is all the more poignant in 2020 because there seems to be a lot of variety of things that have happened this year. So by doing nothing, you really can't do that. Not only for your organization, you need to be prepared, but you need to be prepared for your community because typically the hardest hit individuals in a disaster are the people that you are already serving as community action agencies. I've seen that time and time again. So have a plan, not because Adrian says you have to in your grant, but because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, so this is something that we've talked about that over the last year and a half now, probably even before I got as involved with IEMA as I am now. We started talking about the need for agencies that are used to having the disasters in their area. For example, there's parts of the state that flood on a fairly regular basis, or there seems to be parts of the state that tornadoes are more likely to have an occurrence that does significant damage. So this is where the need, when Michelle is talking about take disaster seriously and have a plan for it, this is where we're talking about and encouraging everybody to have that disaster relief program written into your grant from the start. That way we're not trying to piece things together at the time of a crisis. We can go through that in a blue sky day and start getting that plan so that whenever a disaster happens in your area, we can respond to that a lot quicker, and it's so much easier to work through on that. So
it is, and the thing is, being flexible is key. Having a plan and being willing to adjust it on the fly. I mean, look, you and I are doing a webinar right now from our homes. Who would have ever thought we would be conducting business from our homes? But we have to be flexible. And when I say have a plan, it's not just a plan being part of a plan for a community, but what's your plan for your own agency? When you had to shut the lights off and leave your building because you couldn't work there anymore, what did you do? How well did you, have a concept of operations and a continuity of planning? Most of us didn't do so well, but we've all learned to rebound. And so now it's a matter of documenting how you did it so you can do it better for the next time.
Exactly.
So the other thing I would say is if you were on that map and you saw, that there is a COAD or a long-term recovery committee in your area, and you didn't know that, join up. Everybody, well, I mean, the more the merrier is our line of thinking. It takes a lot of hands to do a lot of things. Oh man, why is my phone ringing? That's awkward. That's my house phone. No one calls it but telemarketers. So I can't get up and answer that. So if you're on a map and you saw that one didn't exist, I'm telling you, start one. Just take the initiative. If nobody's done it, it's probably because no one's thought about it. It's not that it's not a territorial thing. It's not an emergency management problem. It's not a fire department problem. It's a community problem. And who better to start up one and bring people together, because that's what you do anyway, than a community action agency. And all of us on this call are resources for you to succeed in that endeavor. So you're not going to be an island.
Yeah, I also think our community action network has an advantage in some regards, because in the process of us doing our needs assessment and our community action plans that we do on a regular basis, we're identifying the other social service agencies out within the area. So that would be part of forming a COAD and VOAD, I would guess, is reaching out to those other social service agencies and finding out what, if anything, they're able to bring to the table in the time of a crisis. Am I right on that, or?
Absolutely. And again, I want to reiterate time and time again, I can tell you, for example, in the Taylorville tornado, so I keep bringing that up because that's where my first experience was with community action agencies, but I also bring that up because that's my hometown. I don't live there now, but my parents were personally impacted. So they had what we would call moderate damage in our world, but they were insured. So they probably didn't need services like the community action agency there has because they could get back up on their feet. But in most disasters, the people that need the services the most are already the ones getting services from many of these social service agencies in regular time. So, you know, how can we all work together? I think in the social service world, we tend to think of disasters independent of everyday social needs. And I'm seeing a big shift in that philosophy and making that transition easier and adding more benefits to folks when they're affected by disaster. If we start with the social service agencies, it makes that much easier every disaster.
And yeah, I think we covered everything on there. Is that the last slide that you've got?
That's it. This is how to get a hold of me. If I didn't bore you to tears after this, email works best right now for obvious reasons, but there will be a time where that phone is answered more regularly than it is. Again, my goal is to see everyone succeed and to have a COAD or VOAD or long-term recovery in every part of the state. And I think we all want the same things, and we're here to support you to get to that point.
So, Gabby, do you have anything that you'd like to close with, or have you used all your words for the day?
I'll just say exactly what Michelle said is we do see that the people impacted and have the most need following a disaster are those who were vulnerable beforehand. And so as we're continuing to work together, our goal is to increase our resiliency within our communities. So we see that we're continuing to move the needle on building up our communities, and you all are the perfect example and vehicle to do that.
All right. I think with that, we're at about the 40-minute mark. I promised everybody whenever I said I was going to do conversations with Adrian, I said, look, I'll make them 15 to 30-minute videos so that people don't have to spend a lot of time. And I was told, Adrian, there's no way you can just talk for 15 to 30 minutes, and I proved them right. So we're going to go ahead and close this video. I encourage you to watch some of the other videos that we have, the conversations with Adrian. I know we have one with NASCAS talking about community initiatives and projects that we can work on the community with. We have one with ICA talking about the contract. One with the University of Illinois talking about the healthy homes and how we can move together with that. So thank you all for joining us, and Gabby, Michelle, thank you guys very much for participating in this and sharing your knowledge. So I will
thank you.
I will talk to you all later in a different video, and hope you have a great day. Thanks.